Next, Mr Steve Pavinas.
Thanks, Mr Chairman. I must say I'm absolutely disgusted that someone who gets paid $3 million a year would walk into the board and say that's not enough money, I want $2 million more. It's just a disgrace. But thanks for the presentation, Mr Strong, and how kind we are to have such a CEO of the airline who I note has forfeited only $80,000 of his $5 million wage. That is an absolute shame. And, of course, he could earn $6 million. We haven't even talked much about that. But just on some of the comments that you made earlier, Mr Chairman, about hearing two more motions before we tuck tail and run with our wages approved and have some afternoon tea, there's a matter that I wanted to raise, that because in the opening you said something about 3 motions that were raised by nearly 1,000 shareholders that you're going to ignore, and I've got a feeling that that would be illegal for you to ignore motions raised by the legitimate owners of this company. Now, for you to escape here today, I don't want you to be able to respond and say that, well, nobody raised the motions at the meeting, because I believe if you're going to ignore those motions, there might be a place waiting for you in Long Bay Jail. Now, on that note, I now formally propose that the 3 motions raised by Qantas after the remuneration motions.
Well, let me say that that's not a legitimate motion to be brought before the board, because all motions which are to come before the board have to be able to be considered by all shareholders, not only those shareholders present, but those shareholders who are not present but have voted in proxy. So I'm afraid I'm not prepared to accept that.
But those motions could have been considered by the shareholders if you had have sent out the supporting material to those who were entitled to vote via proxies. So the motion could have been considered, but you chose not to because you didn't want to hear from the shareholders that they had no confidence in the board or its direction. So again, I now formally propose those motions be put.
As I said, it is not a proper motion to be put before the board. Let me say that in the reply to the shareholders and to the Pilots Association in relation to what they put forward, we said they will have plenty of opportunity to show the shareholders will have plenty of opportunity to show their confidence or otherwise in directors, as a number of directors have been up for election today. So I understand your frustration, but that's the reality. Thank you. Number 3.
Chairman, I present Mr Stephen Matthews.
Thank you, Mr Strong. Through you, Chairman, thank you, Mr Strong, for your explanation with regard to remuneration. But you didn't, of course, tell the whole story. And while I think it might be lost if I were to start going into a whole lot of detail, you didn't mention that, of course, Mr Joyce's allocation of rights is subject to relative performance hurdles, whereas all the shareholders in this room are dependent on absolute shareholder performance. And you didn't touch on the fact that fair value is used to determine the quantum of rights that are issued rather than VWAP, or volume weighted average price, which at the 30th of June was $1.84. I think the fair rights value was something just over $1. So that means the quantity, of course, is massively increased. Could I just say shareholders have an expectation, when you talk about alignment, that it will be aligned with shareholders whose price at the 30th of June was $1.84. Fixed dollar amount divided by $1.84, less units than fixed amount divided by the fair value, which is less than $1.84. However, be that as it may, I wondered why, and I'd like to offer a suggestion to you and to the other non-executive directors at the table. I wonder why you don't include in your annual report or in graphs that you present to shareholders the total CEO and top 5 remuneration actually delivered over 5 years, as you were talking about. You're a great fan of amounts that are actually delivered. If you were to plot that against total shareholder return over the last 5 or 10 years, shareholders and the other directors around the table would be able to tell at a glance if there was indeed any relationship between pay and performance. And with your indulgence, Chairman, having made that suggestion, and to avoid taking the time of the meeting with the next resolution, if I could just make a comment that I've no doubt Mr Strong, as Chairman of the Board Remuneration Committee, is aware of the fact that over the last 5 years the share price has gone from $5.60 to $1.50, and that the dividend has gone from 30 cents per share to nil over the last couple of years. During that time, we've paid CEOs at Qantas nearly $55 million. The non-executive directors have been paid over $13 million, and the chairperson's almost $3 million. Not all of that to you, of course, sir. Clearly, the bulk of the CEO's $55 million paid over the last 5 years has been value destructive. If you contrast that with Singapore Airlines, a company roughly the same size as Qantas, maybe a bit smaller in terms of revenue, that has outperformed Qantas, hasn't missed a dividend in the last 5 years. Its share price has fallen, I grant you, but only a fraction of the sort of fall we've seen in the Qantas share price. And their non-executive directors are paid around half what Qantas directors are paid, and the CEO takes home less than half that given by the Qantas CEO, the Qantas board to this CEO. And in reading the Singapore Airlines annual report, and particularly their comments on incentives, it seems to me to be more in the nature of, deliver, do the job or move on. By any stretch of the imagination, Qantas shareholders have not been served well by their board and its remuneration committee over the last 5 years. We've delivered lots and lots of money to executives and CEOs, and value has been destroyed. If we continue to pay above the odds for suboptimal performance at Qantas, we're not going to have an airline to pass on to our kids. It's time to hold this board to account and force change in the interests of the company and its shareholders, and I urge you to join me in voting against this remuneration report. Thank you.
So, Mr Matthews, you're able to comment on both resolutions, and I understand that. If I could just comment on a couple of things. I understand the concern about paying on relative versus absolute performance. We have pretty stringent relative performances, not only against airlines but against the ASX, and that is demanding. I think we all know what the world has gone through, and airlines in particular, over the last couple of years, and I frankly think the CEO and the management team have done a very good job in guiding this company through that time. If I come to Singapore Airlines, or for that matter other airlines, one of the advantages of Singapore Airlines is that it is based in a hub in Asia, and we've spent most of today talking about the particular advantages they have. And I'd also say to you that sometimes the disclosures in different companies about in countries, different remuneration disclosures, are not as fulsome and as extensive as ours. But James, do you want to make any comments before I move to the next question?
Well, Chairman, the matters which Stephen's raised, I think he and I have debated before. I endorse your comments about it. I think we're at risk here when we get into very technical descriptions of boring half of the people here, but if you want to have a discussion outside of this meeting, I'm quite happy to do so, because we have had quite constructive dealings with each other in relation to other companies previously.
Thank you. Number one.
Chairman, may I introduce to you Mr Barry Jackson.
Hello again. You've got to excuse me. I've been up all night flying passengers. That's what we do as pilots, and funny enough, that's where we earn our money. I want to make a point that, as has been cited several times, that some other airlines have done extremely well, and we seem to pay our CEOs a fairly significant amount. And yet, I do challenge Alan, if he's going to talk about our salary in the newspapers, we won't talk about his. I'd like to remind the board that there's several groups of unhappy employees. When you do go travelling, don't turn right, don't go into first class. Don't turn left, go the other way. Go and talk to your staff, ask them what's going on. I have not, and I've attempted several times to speak to the chairman about where we're at. The pilots themselves, and I haven't had a chance to speak today, as you can see from probably a few red ties around here, they are concerned about their future. As I said, if we fly aeroplanes, we make money when we fly aeroplanes, and the amount of pilots that are going out the door to work elsewhere in the world, there may be other reasons why aircraft are not grounded, and that doesn't include maintenance. I think, again, engagement, if you're going to get rewarded for performance, I think engagement should be part of that performance. I think several groups, as I said, I've never seen a group of younger guys who are looking to the future, want to see Qantas succeed, yet they don't see a future for themselves, and therefore they will go to the opposition. I'd like to see more emphasis from all of the board on actually, as been discussed several times throughout today, about the engagement of the staff. After all, there are airlines around the world, there's British Airways, Delta, you name it, they are moving towards using their staff to create wealth and work with them to create wealth. And I haven't seen that, certainly of late.
Mr. Jackson, thanks for your comments. And I know you know that I and other directors do talk with staff, pilots included, first officers included. But what I don't want to do, and I think it's inappropriate, is, as I said before, inject the board between management and properly represented unions. So that's why we haven't met on a formal basis. But as you know, I do talk whenever I'm on the planes, when there's a time to talk on any long-haul planes, I do talk with the staff, and I've spoken with many pilots. Can I now move to number 3, then I'll come back to Jack, who I can see waiting patiently there.